Hi, Melissa. Thanks so much for that introduction and overview. And I don't want to detract from our presenters. I'm basically making a brief cameo appearance here to do a little bit of decoding. Both of the tools that we're highlighting today use EAC-CPF, which is a relatively new standard, encoded archival context for corporate bodies, persons, and families. This is a companion to EAD, or Encoded Archival Description, a companion standard. And it's based on the international standard Archival Authority Records for Corporate Bodies, Persons, and Families, affectionately known as ISAAR-CPF, which is a data content standard issued by the International Council on Archives. EAC-CPF was adopted by the Society of American Archivists in 2011 as a standard for encoding archival authority data. But EAC is not used just in the U.S., but is a global standard and is actively used in France, Germany, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Australia, for example. For even more examples of EAC in use, check out the SNAC prototype, which is part of the Social Networks and Archival Context Project, or SNAC for short, and the follow-on Building a National Authorities Infrastructure Project, which seeks to establish a National Archival Authorities Cooperative, which of course would lead us with a NAC. So a lot of it's an acronym-full world, of course, here, folks. EAC is different from other archival, I should say, authority standards, in that it really puts an emphasis on relations, so relations with other resources, relationships between the records and corporate bodies, persons or families, and with archival functions. So how the records are what functions the records were created for. EAC-CPF is compatible with library authorities and structures such as Library of Congress and MODS, and offers a great deal of flexibility for alternate names, various forms, and local implementations, which has made it actually quite attractive for people outside the archival community, so not just useful perhaps for archivists, but for people outside. I think our presenters will put a little more meat on the bones of EAC-CPF, but I wanted to just give a little introduction and overview to it before we dive in. So now I think it's time to turn things over to Ethan, who will take us away with EAC.
Hi. First of all, I'd like to thank OCLC Research for inviting me, and Marilee and Tim for dropping my name, I guess, as a possible presenter for this webinar. I've never done one of these things before, so hopefully it goes smoothly. Before I get started on my presentation, I'd first like to say a few things about myself and my research, and why exactly I'm focusing mainly on Greek and Roman people rather than typical archival authorities. For the last 3 years, I've been working at the American Numismatic Society, working mainly on Greek and Roman projects related to coinage, and this is more in line with my own academic interests. My master's degree is in classical archaeology. But before I started working at the ANS, I worked for the University of Virginia Library for close to 5 years in different departments working on digital curation and digital humanities sorts of projects. And so in my time at UVA, I developed some more experience dealing with EAD and archival data. And so since the American Numismatic Society is also a library and an archive as well as a large collection of coins, this is perfect for me because it's enabled me to continue on working on EAD and EAC-CPF projects and software. So it's a really great fit, and I'm always interested in adapting these tools and standards found in libraries and archives to digital humanities and into archaeological data. So now to get on with my presentation, it's titled Building Interlinked Prosopographies, a New Approach. So this is mainly focused on using EAC-CPF to build a social network of Greek and Roman people. And not only building this network and creating data, but also creating software for the editing, maintenance, and publication of EAC-CPF records, focused primarily around Zeek, as I pronounce it. It's an open source software application on GitHub based on Xforms. And Xforms is a W3C standard web form specification which follows model, view, controller architecture. This is fairly technical and you don't have to be concerned so much about how that works. But in order, and to summarize it, I think, is Xforms is XML, and it's XML embedded in XHTML documents. And much like XSLT can be used to create HTML from an EAD finding aid, Xforms allows you to create the schematic processes and functionality of a web form, which is then piped through a processor to create web forms that people can manipulate in their browser in order to edit and publish complex XML data. So, so it allows you to manipulate complex XML models like EAC-CPF or EAD or any other model that you can think of. And Xforms also supports XPath validation, which can be either very simple or very complex. And also, Xforms interact with REST services, which are APIs such as getting data back from DBpedia or VIAF or geonames.org, and embedding that sort of data in EAC records. So I'll provide a fairly brief outline of the architecture of Zeek. First, there's the Xforms instructions. So it's Xforms embedded in XHTML, and there's an Xforms processor built on top of this, which is Orbeon, an open source Java application that runs in Apache Tomcat. And Orbeon includes all of the really complicated XSLT and JavaScript and Java backend stuff that will read my Xforms instructions and then run that through various scripts to create a web form complete with all the CSS and AJAX calls necessary to run the service. And so an editor or author of EAC data can interact with this web form, edit an EAC record, and when he or she clicks the Save button, since Orbeon allows you to interact with REST services, that data can then be sent to an EXIST database, which is an open source XML database. And it can also be sent to Solr, which is a I would say the de facto standard search index in libraries. Blacklight is based on Solr, as is Viewfind, I believe, and a variety of other applications. And Solr supports faceted search and keyword search and all sorts of other really nifty functionalities. But Zeek also includes a user interface intended for the public. And so Orbeon allows you to then interact with Solr and EXIST through the public level and combining XSLT, JavaScript, and CSS, it allows you to create web pages for EAC-CPF records. And on the other side, there are a wide variety of web services online that you see to the right, VIAF and DBpedia. So in the web form, you can interact with these web services. You can query them. You can get information back to store in your record or whatnot. But you can also interact with these web services through the public interface. So for example, you can embed URIs for geonames.org, which is a website that creates URIs and identifiers for every geographical place on Earth. You can embed these URIs in your EAC record, and then in the user interface, you can use that identifier to perform a lookup on geonames to extract latitude and longitude data in XML in order to render KML or linked data. So there are a wide variety of widgets or tools that you can build on top of these web services. So now I'll take you through the basic walkthrough of Zeek through the form itself. And so first, before I begin taking you through the web form for editing an EAC record, I'll first take you to the settings page. Because since I've been using Xforms and developing Xforms for quite a while, I have more experience with it, and it's not as difficult to develop Xforms as it used to be for me, anyway. And I think that, yeah.
Would you mind just increasing the font size on your browser just a tad?
Oh, right. Okay. Is that better?
Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So, so the challenge is not necessarily in creating the form that allows you to create EAC records. The challenge, I think, is creating the relationships between records and maintaining those relationships when you edit one document and you change a relationship between that entity and another entity. You want that other entity to be updated as well to reflect changes in relationship. So for example, if I'm editing a record of Alexander the Great and his father is Philip II, you want to say in the Alexander record that Philip is the parent of Alexander, and then when you click Save, you want Philip's record to be edited to say that Alexander is the child of him. And so I've introduced in the settings page for Zeek a list of possible relationships which are used by the Xlink arc role attribute in the EAC record. And you can import existing relations from your exist database into this form, and then link a relation to its inverse relationship. So a spouse of, the inverse of spouse of is spouse of, but the inverse of child of is parent of, and so forth. And so when you create this list, you can also attach namespaces. So you can use RDF or linked data ontologies that reflect relationships within your EAC record. So suppose I define my own ontology and I want to define corresponded with. I enter that into the form, and then in the drop-down menu I can select the inverse relation of corresponded with. And then once you've defined a prefix, which is the value before the colon, you then are required to input a URI to then make that valid. So then when you edit your EAC record, it will embed this semantic declaration into your EAC record, which will make it possible to reflect these relationships in RDF in an RDF export. So now to go in to a sample document and show you how it works, I'll let
Sorry about that, folks. I'm not sure what is causing the audio difficulty. Please stand by. It's coming from Ethan's line, and I'm not sure why that's happening. Ethan, I'm not sure if you know why that's happening. Let me try and unmute. I muted you. Let's unmute you again and see what happens. I really don't know what that is. Marilee, are you able to speak? Yes, I'm able to speak. Okay. That was pretty loud. So that was. Maybe we could ask Ethan to hang up and call back in, and in the meantime, would it be too disruptive to have Tim and Allison present their piece? I think that would be a great idea. I think we should move on, and we'll pick back up with EAC after Tim and Allison's presentation. Okay, great. It'll take me just a second here to get that set up. Okay, Tim, you should now be able to present. Thank you. Sorry again for that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Melissa, and thanks, folks, for bearing with us. So now we're transitioning into RAMP, which is the Remixing Archival Metadata Project Editor. This is an outline of what we'll cover in our portion of the presentation. So a brief overview of the tool, and then Allison is going to talk a little bit about her experience using it and about name authority work with EAC-CPF. And then we'll launch into the demo, which she'll take most of the first part, talking about VIAF and WorldCat identities, interactions through the tool, and then I'll talk about using RAMP to contribute to Wikipedia, and then come back for some closing thoughts. Okay, what is RAMP? It's a browser-based tool that can be used to do two things. It can be used to derive, create, and enhance EAC-CPF records, and it can be used to transform those records into wiki markup for publication to Wikipedia through its API. One of the primary goals of this project is to help more librarians and archivists become active on Wikipedia by giving them a way to repurpose their existing metadata and descriptions. Another of the project's goals is to facilitate the process of future-proofing local data by associating it with uniform resource identifiers that can later be used to tie into the emerging web of data. Even when it's minimal by archival standards, archival description can still contain a wealth of contextual data, and emerging standards like EAC-CPF provide a framework for structuring and disseminating that data in ways that extend beyond traditional modes of presentation. So a little bit about the technical infrastructure. One of the other goals of RAMP was to make the software as accessible as possible. With this in mind, the project utilizes a common LAMP stack. On the back end, PHP is used to facilitate XSLT transformations, XML validation, and database access. And much of this functionality is exposed as lightweight services that can be accessed with JavaScript. Client-side jQuery is used to communicate with those services. So this is what you need to run RAMP. And note that it's not currently compatible with Internet Explorer. Apologies to all of you IE fans out there. Okay, now just a word about what this tool isn't. It's not really designed to be a robust management system for EAC-CPF records. I think from Ethan's presentation, I think you can get a sense that that's something that Zeke is much better equipped to do. Our goal with RAMP was really to experiment with EAC-CPF and explore its potential as a data exchange format. Of course, we're still generating valid EAC-CPF records and are concerned with maintaining the integrity of the standard, but our ultimate goal is to translate existing descriptions from one community of practice, that of libraries and archives, to another, that of Wikipedia. So in this sense, there's kind of a cultural shift or dynamic involved, and we could even say that the project's unofficial motto might be something like, RAMP is more than just metadata, it's a lifestyle. Okay, that was my little moment of comic relief. So now we'll transition into the demo portion of our presentation. And how do I share my screen, or do you do that for me, Melissa?
Actually, you can go up to the share menu and do share your desktop or share application.
Thanks.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, so can you see the home page now?
Yes.
So here we are on the RAMP homepage, and you can see here a link to the Code for Lib article that was published in the last issue of that journal, and to the RAMP GitHub repository. And you can see below that the tool currently includes 4 areas of functionality: convert or import, create, edit, and export. Starting with the 2 areas on the left, we see that we can begin by converting a set of EAD XML finding aids into EAC-CPF records, or if we have some existing EAC-CPF records, we can just import them as is. And those files need to be placed into a specific folder, the EAD folder in the RAMP installation directory. Once those files are there, you can click Import Files to begin the process, and during the conversion routine, both the original input file and the resulting EAC-CPF XML records are stored in separate tables in the RAMP MySQL database. Okay, at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Allison, who's going to say a little about her experience using RAMP and demo the tool's ingest routines for VAF and WorldCat identities.
Thanks. Everybody can hear me okay?
So Allison, making you the presenter will stop sharing Tim's desktop, just in case that was, so you've got control now.
Okay, so now I'm going to share my desktop. And everybody can see the RAMP homepage now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So Tim asked me to give my perspective because I was one of the first sort of RAMP user test dummies. And I've been working on a project that harvested metadata concerning our library's artist book collection from a MARC format bibliographic database and converted the relevant data elements about creators to the EAC-CPF schema. And as a kind of semi-traditional library cataloger, I was attracted to EAC for its offering of 2 specific benefits over the MARC authorities format. 1, the focus on relationship building, and 2, the relative ease of developing front-end interfaces for XML documents, that is, relative to working with MARC data housed in proprietary integrated library systems. When I came on board at Miami, I was instantly excited about the RAMP editor for its data conversion and ingest features, which facilitate, as mentioned, linked data, etc., but also linking our holdings with those of other institutions and expanding knowledge beyond what's available in the item at hand when you're cataloging. So, as mentioned, there are 2 options for creating an EAC record in RAMP, either by converting EAD formatted data or by using a blank template. So I think we'll start by taking a look at the latter. And the form you see here was locally customized with fields that are most appropriate for creators of bibliographic works and for easy mapping back to the MARC format. I scroll through, you see what we've got here. This should all look familiar to librarians out there. So once a record is created, either by manually entering information on this form or by using the conversion process, you go to the edit screen. And I'm just going to select a record that was already created. And you'll see here you're in an XML view, and you can, of course, make edits directly in the data. I'm going to start by clicking on Ingest WorldCat Identities. And we're going to search WorldCat for Denise Bookwalter. No results found. That's really embarrassing. I'm so sorry, guys. Let's try a different name. Okay. So here, I'm just given the option to double check that this is actually the correct name entity. And you can click out and see, yes, this is the creator that I'm thinking of. Go back to the RAMP editor. And I'll select this name. And what I'm presented with here is a list of subject and genre headings that are associated with this person through the WorldCat database. And I can pick and choose which ones I want to dump into the EAC record. It's important to note here that since RAMP was designed with relationship building in mind, any name entities or works associated with Natalia are going to be automatically dumped into the EAC record. So I don't even have to think about that. So let's just, for the exercise, select a few subject headings, and we'll use those. And it gives me a little pop-up saying, yep, all that happened. And there are a couple of other things that are automatically brought into the EAC record. I'm going to let Tim point a few of them out.
Okay, thanks, Allison. You can see at the top there are some other record elements, and those contain, if the WorldCat Identities record has a VIAF ID, that's there. The Library of Congress control number for that entity is there. And if you scroll down, you'll be able to see the FAST headings if you chose any, the subject headings. And then if you continue scrolling, you can see that any works, or rather any related entities which have been determined algorithmically by WorldCat identities that belong to this or related to this person, those will be there, and then any works by or about this person will be brought in automatically too.
Thanks. So particularly in Natalia's case, we only have one item by this author. And this EAC record started off with, we had this one title, we know a little bit about this creator, and pulling in from WorldCat, we got all of this other information about projects that she's worked on. So if we go to ingest VIAF, we're basically doing the same thing again. I happen to know it's the top one. The only slight difference when you're ingesting information from VIAF is that it doesn't automatically bring in all of those name entities. You have to manually select which ones. Go ahead. Okay. So I just want to say that I've personally found that using RAMP is great for not only building a well-rounded and relationship-heavy set of records about creators, but also for quickly looking up a given artist's other works, the institutions which hold them. This helps with cataloging activity. I mean, I just find it so fantastic to be able to see what an artist or writer is into, what subjects and themes they participate in and are excited about. But it can also inform collection development. And, you know, you can start thinking about using this in lots of different creative ways. And really, Tim wanted me to talk today because I've been using RAMP to facilitate a project that almost completely goes outside of its intended scope. I'm using library data instead of archive data, and I'm exporting the EAC records to a different platform than Wikipedia. And I personally see a lot of potential for the application of the tool and how it allows the option to use only portions of its features and to think creatively about exploiting that. But Tim is now going to demo what RAMP was really built to do, which is to convert special collections and archives metadata into content for Wikipedia articles. There.
Okay, thanks for that, Allison. And I'm going to share my desktop again. Okay, and the record I chose to edit today as part of the Wikipedia demo was derived from the finding aid for the James Horace Alderman collection here at the University of Miami Special Collections Division. According to Google Analytics, this is one of our top-ranking finding aids in terms of web traffic. And this is the page for the finding aid. And this is a picture of Mr. James Horace Alderman, who was a Prohibition-era alcohol smuggler. He became known in the press by names like the King of the Rum Runners, and he was actually hanged by the U.S. Coast Guard after killing 2 Coast Guardsmen and a Secret Service agent in an altercation. So this is a small collection. It consists of the typescript of his autobiography, which was written during his imprisonment prior to execution. Okay, on a lighter note there. Now, before I convert the record to wiki markup, I should say a quick word about rights and permissions. As a rule, I don't think we as information professionals are very proprietary about our resource descriptions, but when we want to do something like contributing text to Wikipedia, we need to be explicit about intellectual property issues. And to be clear, when I say contributing text, I'm talking about taking biographical or historical text from a finding aid and copying it directly to Wikipedia. To be able to do that, we need to follow Wikipedia's licensing guidelines. And at first, that process can seem a little daunting, but you certainly shouldn't let it scare you away at all. And what we've actually tried to do with RAMP is to establish a model that should make that part of the process relatively painless. Essentially, the only work you would need to do in this regard when using RAMP is to include an appropriate rights statement on the web page of the finding aid whose text you want to contribute, and then archive a copy of that of the finding aid web page for citation purposes. So here you can see on our finding aid web page we've included a license statement and released it under Creative Commons Attribution, Share-alike license, and a GNU free documentation license. Okay, so from here we can click Convert to Wiki Markup. And voila, we're presented with a new editing screen that contains a text box with nicely formatted wiki markup. If we want to, we can enlarge this text area to view the contents more easily. And we might want to begin by familiarizing ourselves with what's here. There's a link to help with wiki markup to gain familiarity with the conventions. But we see at the top that we have an info box template. We have a biography, which is the biog hist from our finding aid. We have a works and publications section, a see also section for related entities, and a notes and references section. And then we have some other metadata templates. We have external links. We have a person data template categories, etc. Okay, and what we've done to facilitate the process of contributing text to Wikipedia is to also create a series of custom templates. And we had some help doing this from a member of the Wikipedia editing community, Sven Mangard, who generously dedicated his time to creating these templates. So what those do is basically take care of the boilerplate we need to include for licensing purposes. So if we go back up, you can see that under notes and references here, we have a site ramp template that's going to show up on the article page, and we also have a site open finding aid template that's going to slap on a reference to the appropriate licenses. Okay, but first let's double check Wikipedia to see whether there's already a page for James Horace Alderman. So we'll click check Wikipedia for existing article and click OK. And we see here that, yes, there is an existing page, so we'll select that one. And then resize our box. And we see that we have a second text area that shows us the wiki markup of the existing page. So we can click View Existing Wikipedia page here, take a look at what's there already. And we see that there's not too much here in this article. There's no image, no info box, and there's some improper formatting going on in the references section. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do for demonstration purposes, I'm going to delete this, and I'm going to copy over our locally generated wiki markup. But what I'm actually going to do, I'm not going to publish this directly to Wikipedia, to the live page. I'm going to submit this article as a draft to Wikipedia. What that does is it allows me to create a subpage of my Wikipedia user account with this article, and that's recommended for work in progress. Okay, in order to do this, I have to have a Wikipedia account, but it only takes a minute to set one up. So I'm going to sign in now with my Wikipedia credentials. Okay, and then I'm presented with a text box where I can summarize the edits I've just made, and we provide you with a link to the RAMP project page on Wikipedia so that we can make it clear that we've used the tool to make this edit. So I'm just going to say posted new draft and click OK. And here it is. Here's the page that we've just created. Our archival metadata has been remixed and made into a Wikipedia page. Granted, there's still not that much content here right now, but it at least provides a starting point. And the ultimate goal of RAMP is not to magically generate fully formed featured articles on Wikipedia, but to lower the threshold for participation by providing an inroad into the Wikipedia editing experience. So here under Notes and References, we can see our custom citation templates at work. And we could proceed to work on the article here, or we could go back to RAMP and pull in the existing article again and integrate the two of them from there. But for right now, I've actually done a little work on this page already. So I'm going to go ahead and paste in what I've already done. And I need to fill out the CAPTCHA, of course. Okay, and now in a second we should see our page. And here it is, 30 minutes later. So what I've done is I've found a public domain image, the one that I showed earlier of aldermen. This was actually on the U.S. Coast Guard website. And I've filled out the info box. I've formatted the notes and references a little bit, and then cleaned up some other things, provided a link again to our finding aid and also to the National Archives, which holds some documents related to aldermen's execution. Okay. So now I'd like to go back to the slides to conclude. Okay, and I'm back in the slides, right, Melissa?
Right. Good job.
Thanks. Okay, to conclude, I'd like to just talk a little bit about the benefits and the context of interacting with Wikipedia. In general, I'd say if you take a well-researched biog-hist from a finding aid, it actually has a very encyclopedic quality to it already. And I think there's a clear analogy that can be drawn between the structured content of an EAC-CPF record and that of a biographical Wikipedia page. The GLAM Wiki movement, galleries, libraries, archives, and museums with Wikipedia, has been going strong for several years now. But my sense, anecdotally at least, is that many librarians and archivists still find it challenging to engage with Wikipedia. Roy Tennant had a recent blog post called The Winter of Wikipedia's Discontent, in which he described his own somewhat negative experience with Wikipedia and joined an ongoing discussion about the relative lack of cultural and ethnic diversity in the Wikipedia universe and the decline in the number of Wikipedia contributors in recent years. But specifically, what are some of the benefits of engaging with Wikipedia? Well, it's really, I think, a two-way street. Wikipedia stands to benefit from the high-quality data and curatorial attention to detail that librarians and archivists have worked to develop over time. And contributing our data to Wikipedia has definite benefits for us, too. A recent article in DLib magazine by Michael Zajewski reported the Ball State University Library's experience with seeding links to its digital collections on related Wikipedia pages. They witnessed traffic to their digital repository spike, in some cases, by more than 5,000%. So those are the benefits. Are there any caveats? There are some. Wikipedia can provide users with new access points, but at the same time, it might actually challenge us as librarians and archivists to evaluate our own descriptive practice. The Wikipedia editing community places a premium on rigorous citation of sources, for example, which is not necessarily something that gets included in a typical finding aid. And of course, there are other Wikipedia community norms that we need to be aware of, such as the criterion of notability. What's notable to us may not be notable to Wikipedia, but essentially what it boils down to is we need to curate our contributions, which is a concept we're familiar with. To conclude, it's become somewhat of a commonplace to talk about archives and special collections as the unique resources that set our institutions apart in today's often chaotic information landscape. However, I think that standards like EAC-CPF really allow us to kind of rethink our professional relevance in new ways. The curators who care for these unique resources are also stewards of information about the unique people associated with them. And a platform like Wikipedia, for all of its flaws, can serve as a powerful tool for curating that information, the information that's out there publicly about the people and organizations represented in our archival and special collections. Okay, I'll end with some credits. RAMP has really been a collaborative project across divisions within the University of Miami Libraries. Here you see a photo of David Gonzalez, one of our programmers, at one of our morning Scrum meetings during one of the development sprints when we were working on the tool. And I'd like to give a special shout out to some members of the GlamWiki community who have been very supportive in helping document and get the tool on its feet, really, with vis-a-vis Wikipedia. So Dorothy Howard, Wikipedian in residence at the Metro New York Library Council, Matthew Fleischen at the Wikimedia Foundation, and again Sven Mangard, a Wikipedia editor, who helped us with the templates. So that's basically it. Thanks for your time.
So I think we have time for just a couple questions for Allison and Tim before we return to Ethan's presentation. Ethan reports that he kicked off the switch on the surge protector, so everything's fine now. So we can return to him with no problems pretty shortly. We do have a couple questions. The first question I have is from Sarah Snyder, who asks, Tim, I expect that GLAM folks are on board, but how has the Wikipedia community reacted to RAMP?
The Wikipedia community, broadly speaking?
Yeah, like what kind of reactions have you had from the Wikipedia community?
Well, I would say that to date, most of our interaction has been with the GLAM folks primarily, because we're just kind of at the place now where we can really go into production with this. The templates were actually just created this week, the citation templates and license release templates. So I think now that that's in place, we're kind of in a position where we can get more feedback and from the broader Wikipedia editing community and see what kind of what kind of iteration we might need to do from there. Okay, great.
It looks like Beth Ann Kolsch, I'm sorry I'm saying your name wrong. How does your Wikipedia article contribution work if there's a current Wikipedia article on a subject? And I think you tried to demonstrate that in the case of Mr. Rumrunner,
right.
But there was an existing article.
Right. So so RAMP presents you with two side-by-side text boxes where you can manipulate the wiki markup directly and go back and forth between the locally generated markup and what's existing, and then you can, post an integrated article to either as a draft to your user account or directly to the live article.
And one of the things I think you didn't demonstrate is that you can push over specific elements from RAMP into the wiki markup.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I know. I had test edited a couple of info boxes. One of the things Sarah said in Twitter is that it's worth it just for the price of the info box creation alone.
Right.
It cuts out the pain of making an info box. And then
yeah,
Beth asks, does your new article then become the official listing? And if you go ahead and publish anything on Wikipedia, anybody can edit Wikipedia at any time. You don't even need to be logged in. You can go ahead boldly and hit that edit button and see what happens the minute you push publish, unless it's a protected page for some reason. The edits will go live immediately. So
right.
Editing on Wikipedia is a tightrope act, but also can be very richly rewarding because there's no gatekeepers. Generally.
Exactly. Right.
Let's see, I'm going to switch over to Twitter. See if there's any other comments. Hasn't there been some concern, Kate Timer asks, hasn't there been some concern about the criteria Wikipedia editors use for notability, particularly in regard to women?
Sorry, can you repeat that last part?
Hasn't there been some concern about the criteria Wikipedia editors use for notability, particularly in regard to women? And I think she means articles created about women.
Right. I'm not sure. I mean, there certainly has been concern about the need for greater diversity among the editing pool on Wikipedia and the way that gets reflected in the content and the topics of the articles. So, but I'm not sure about criteria. I don't think Wikipedia doesn't impose any criteria for content about articles about women or about minorities. But I think that there's a kind of, the nature of the community is that it has evolved as somewhat of a self-selecting group, but I think there are very intentional efforts to change that. There's the Rewriting Wikipedia project, which is a project of the Post-Colonial Digital Humanities Initiative, and there are many edit-a-thons that happen on a regular basis to kind of address some of those imbalances.
Yeah, and I would say Kate said that wasn't necessarily aimed at you. I can say that I have seen, and Roy's article, indeed, Roy's Hanging Together post went directly to this. The article that he created was on the second female president of the American Library Association, and the article was taken down because she was not notable enough.
Right.
And a couple of us stepped in and reinforced her article and made it clear that we thought that she was in fact notable, and the article not only stood but has been subsequently embellished. So I think strength in numbers is the name in the game, and getting more people with more diverse views involved in Wikipedia is definitely a good thing. So let's see. I think we have time maybe for one more question, and then we'll go to Ethan. Shannon posts in the chat window that she created Archiviopedia, an archives wiki encyclopedia using the MediaWiki software platform, and received very little participation on the part of archivists, and that RAMP may help to get some archivists over the contribution hump with that. And I think when Allison was talking about some of the opportunities for using RAMP to think more creatively about your collections in the context of other collections, perhaps pushing things into other MediaWiki offshoots could be a way to experiment with that in a more friendly way. So thanks,
Definitely.
Shannon.
Yeah, and I think that I would just add that using RAMP, you don't necessarily have to worry about the wiki markup. You can edit it directly if you wish, but you can push it to Wikipedia, and then Wikipedia recently debuted a new visual editor, so you could then do most of your editing directly on Wikipedia, and use the GUI features that they provide.
So, okay, we're going to now switch back over to Ethan to pick up where we left off when we had the horrible noise. So thank you very much to Tim and Allison, and welcome once again, Ethan.
Hi, I'm glad to be back. Sorry for the glitch earlier. I guess I became too relaxed and stretched my legs out and turned off my computer somehow. So the stopping point was sort of a natural one anyway, where I was about to introduce the web form. So when you load an EAC-CPF record or create a new one, you'll see that the web form is fairly basic in what it requires. It requires a record ID, and when it requires some sort of value input into the form, there will be an exclamation point and a little bit of information about what's required. So let's enter in and create a basic record for Alexander the Great. And some of these full input boxes are text and some are restricted to drop-down menus. So Alexander is a person. His name part is Alexander the Great. And there are different tabs that represent different sections of an EAC document. So there's the Entity tab, which includes name entries, Description, which includes context, biographical information. So if you click on a green plus sign next to Description, it will pop up a window which allows you to input all of the elements which you find in an EAC description. So a place, for example. And you can click on X's to remove them. There is a tab for Relations and a tab for Control, which is the header information, which contains information about the creation and maintenance of the EAC-CPF XML record itself. So the first thing I'll do is first import a bit of data from VIAF. So interacting with the web services from VIAF, we can click on Import VIAF Data and then search for Alexander the Great and see what comes up. So when you click Search, it will query VIAF's own search API, and you can select the appropriate one, which is the first one. And when you click Select, and this will take a few moments to load, it will extract the RDF from VIAF and import all of the preferred, authorized, and alternative name forms for the person or corporate body. And it can also import a few other sets of information. So all of the name entries for all of the authority files for the contributing institutions to VIAF have now been imported into this EAC record. And the preferred forms and authorized and alternative forms are all restricted to drop-down menus, which are defined as convention declarations in the control here. And then suppose now we want to import a bit of information from DBpedia. So we can click on the Import DBpedia data link, type in a URI for Alexander the Great, search, and then it will provide a list of checkboxes for the types of information we'd like to import from DBpedia's linked data. So let's just leave all of these boxes checked and click the Import button. And that will take a moment to load. Okay, so that's finished. And now if we check under Description, it's inserted an abstract with the content from DBpedia. That it has inserted CPF relations and resource relations. A resource is basically a link to some other document online, and resource relations or CPF relations are people, families, and corporate bodies expressed in DBpedia's own RDF within their own ontology for expressing relationships. And when we've done this import of VIAF in DBpedia, it will also insert the URIs for these IDs into the control of the EAC record. So suppose we want to then link Alexander the Great to Philip II, his father. So there are a few ways to do this. We can create a stub for Philip II, because at the moment the relation for Philip II is actually just a DBpedia URI. So let's suppose we want to create a stub for Philip II in Zeek. So then this allows us to click on Create Record, generate a record ID. You can type in something specific, or you can generate the record ID based on the DBpedia URI. You can select his role as person. You can select his ARC role, which for some reason is not working in the Create Stub portion, but it is actually working in the other window. So then in the ARC role, you can select Philip's the role in relation to Alexander. So the role goes from the source document to the target document. So what you want to say is Alexander the Great is the child of Philip II. And there's already a Philip II record in the system. So we can search for it and link to it by typing in Philip and see what pops up. And then we have a Philip II of Macedon already. We can select it in the list. And then this ought to close. And so the next time we save this record, it will then create a stub for Philip II, and in that stub it will contain a relationship in the CPF relations section back to Alexander the Great. So I'll go back to the administrative page, which gives you the list of files and publication options and view options, and I'll click on Philip II to take a look at what that stub, on how that stub appears. And you can see it's fairly basic. He's defined as a person. He has some names. And he also has a relation back to Alexander the Great, which is an internal link. And the control portion includes a maintenance event, which says that it was created by Zeek with a description, record generated by EAC-CPF relation. So that's the basic mechanism of linking entities together. It handles the addition and deletion of relationships so far, but it doesn't handle the change of relationships. So that's one avenue that I have to work on further. So I will open an existing record of Alexander the Great to show you the next phase of this walkthrough, which I think is the sexier phase, which is adding context to a record. And I think this is the real potential in EAC-CPF. So this record already has a variety of name entries, and under description, I've added a chronological list, and under chronological list are chronological items. So you can insert life events and standard dates and places. And these places, since Alexander is an ancient person, these places are from the Pleiades Gazetteer of Ancient Places, which is a database which contains identifiers and linked data for every attested place of the ancient Mediterranean. So we have a variety of places already. So let's add another chronological item. So I click chronological item. At the bottom of the list, we have an event. And the event is the Battle of Gaugamela. And we have a precise date for this event as well. It's October 1st, 331 BC. And we know the place that it happened. So we click a place entry. The place entry is inserted under the chronological item. We have the option to choose between geonames, which is for modern places, Pleiades for ancient, and local vocabulary within the system. So, for example, let me just search for a modern place in geoname. So let's just say Berlin, for argument's sake. So we click the radio button, search for Berlin, and we can select Berlin in the list. And if we click the select button, it will then embed that URI for Berlin and geonames into the EAC record. But we don't actually want to do that. We want to search for Gaugamela. So we select Pleiades from the Pleiades radio button, search for Gaugamela, and let's see what pops up. Something should pop up anyway. Unfortunately, the Pleiades search isn't very fast. Okay, here it is. So we click it, the description pops up in ancient place, we click select, and now we have Gaugamela embedded into our EAC record. We can click on that link, and it will then load the Pleiades place for Gaugamela in a different browser window. So we've entered all of this information, and suppose now we want to take a look at the public user interface. So before I click the Save button, a maintenance event is automatically inserted anytime I make an edit. So I just need to put something in there because an agent's required. So I'll enter that data, and hopefully it saves. I should point out that coordinates aren't necessary to save within the document because the coordinates are saved within Pleiades' RDF. So when KML is generated to reflect this record, the XSLT document that processes the EAC record will perform lookups on Pleiades, get the RDF down, and then insert the coordinates into the KML. So we don't need to actually save any of that into the record. So if we take a look at our record for Alexander the Great, we have some names from DBpedia. Some of these are Unicode characters that aren't handled in Windows for some reason. We have an image, associated identifiers, the DBpedia URI, the abstract, list of chronological events. Here's the one that we just added, Battle of Gaugamela, and various relations. Most of these are external, which point back to DBpedia, but we do have a record of Philip II. And Alexander is defined as child of, using my relationship ontology of Philip II of Macedon, which there is a basic stub record as well. But if we take a look at this map is generated based on the the dates and the places in Pleiades. And so we can scroll through this map and the timeline to take a look at the life of Alexander the Great visualized in this format. You can click on these. So there are a lot of different things, a lot of potential, I think, in building tools on top of this data, EAC data, which contains links to other resources online. And so I think linked data is very much a large part in EAC itself and systems built upon EAC. So if we go, if we click the Browse button, there's also a very basic browse interface in Zeek with some pretty basic faceted search. It's not nearly as sophisticated as it could be, but I've put fairly minimal effort into building the user interface so far. But if we take a look at a record of Augustus that I prepared, I pulled some information from DBpedia as well, abstract and names and relations. But what I also did is I inserted a URI into the other record ID element for Augustus to find on numisma.org. And numisma.org is a collaborative site which seeks to define all of the concepts in numismatics and linked data terms and technology. So if I click on this link, this is the page for Augustus defined in numisma.org, and there's some RDF as well that defines it. But the important thing here are these coins on the right. And these coins are delivered from the numisma.org Sparkle endpoint. By submitting the numisma URI to the Sparkle endpoint, we can get some thumbnail images back for coins of Augustus. So I think this is one way that you can build widgets into Zeek or any other sort of system built upon EAC-CPF to pull data in from linked data sources. So I will switch back to my presentation now and conclude. I have a few concluding remarks. So I think what I've shown you is a basic prototype of the potential for Zeek and for EAC-CPF in developing scholarly prosopographies and social networks of ancient people specifically, but it can be extended to other categories of entities, or even scale up into really large-scale projects such as NAC, I think. So the idea is to create a prosopography of the Roman Empire, and we want to create URIs for all of the people and persons and corporate bodies associated with the Roman Empire. And all of these URIs are reflected by EAC-CPF records. And so we want to aggregate not just coins of Augustus, but statues depicting him. We want to aggregate modern books and modern journal articles written about him, as well as ancient texts or architecture. So we start to compile and aggregate information from a wide variety of resources into one single environment that can be used as a really sophisticated research tool for the ancient world. So there are some next steps. Zeek is still largely in beta, and I plan on developing it further over the next year or two, or who knows how long. So the next step really is to finish the form. Most of the EAC-CPF elements are represented, but not all of them yet, and not all of the attributes are either. I want to test for scalability. I believe that it can scale right now into the hundreds of thousands or even millions of records, but I haven't tested this. I have, however, received 4.5 million EAC records from the SNAC project, but I haven't gotten a chance to play around with them yet. I'd like to interface with more APIs, especially WorldCat and JSTOR, in being able to get books and journal articles and such about entities. I want to improve the public interface, especially searching and browsing, and incorporate social network graph visualizations into the user interface, which takes into consideration to a very large degree Sparkle and linked open data methodologies. So that is more or less my presentation. I'm looking forward to questions. This is the final slide, which contains some information about Zeek. So the demo is available to play around with online. Please let me know if you would like to play with the administrative interface. There is a username and password, but I'm more than willing to give that to you. And so, thanks. That's my presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ethan. I think we have a couple of questions for you from the chat. So Cameron asks, does the unpublished function for records simply take it offline, or does it delete it?
Oh, the unpublished function removes the document from the public interface, but it doesn't delete the document.
Okay, so you can go back and
there
for you to.
Right. So publish puts it into Solr, and then unpublished removes it from Solr. But there, you can delete the file itself. So deleting the file is separate than publishing it or unpublishing it.
Okay, great. And then Ariel asks, Bruce took a stab at answering this, but you can probably confirm. Can people use the Zeek, I have to start saying Zeek demo site like a sandbox to work on our own demo records, or is it for administrators?
Yeah, you can use it as a sandbox site if you want. I think there should be enough resources on the server to handle a few people playing around with it. But like I said, if you want to use it as a sandbox, you'll have to contact me for the login information.
Okay, great. I'm looking for other questions for you, and I don't see them immediately. Kate Bowers from Harvard notes that there's lots of oohing and awing there about the public interface. So lots of positive reactions, certainly, from people on Twitter and elsewhere. I had a question. There was a question from earlier in the chat that I missed that was actually for Allison that relates to EAC. And the question was, Allison, what are you doing with your EAC records once you've created them using RAMP?
So I'm working on a tool that's intended to basically supplement the library catalog with creator metadata. And I could open it up really fast. Do you want to do that?
Sure. If we give you control, you could switch to your. Give us a little show of it. If other people have questions, I encourage you to go ahead and type them into the chat. Oh, good. We're getting some more questions. So, Allison, while you're bringing this up,
okay. So this is, first of all, very, very, very much in a demo. Don't hold any wonky things against me. But the idea here is that this would just be a little widget that could be imposed upon the library catalog. So if you're viewing a record for work, that off to the side you would see information about the creator of that work. So, and all of these are just, it's just a style sheet built right on top of the EAC record. So you can kind of click through and just view and then say, oh yeah, what else do you have that's about folklore? And then, you can search through the catalog. And for the works, you can see, okay, so this one is held at we have it, but also here are all of the other titles that this creator has worked on that we brought in from WorldCat Identities and BIOS. And then, you could click out and see who actually has that, etc.
Very cool. Thanks for showing us.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead. Anything else to say about that?
I think that's it.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much. So Melanie asks, I think this is for Ethan, can you describe how your ontology for relationships fits in or derives from other ontologies and how you developed it?
Yeah. The ontology that's in the demo is basically derived primarily from DBpedia's ontology for expressing relationships. So there's like spouse, child, parent, belongs to dynasty, or is dynasty, or something like that. So it's very simple, and it's derived from that now. As we move forward with developing a social network of the Roman Empire, we'll begin to develop something that's more relevant to the entities being described then. But there is a relationship ontology online. I'll post the link into the chat window, which contains several dozen different relationship types, but I think it's more relevant to relationships between modern people rather than ancient ones. So that's where things stand on the ontology.
Okay, great. And we'll look for that link when you can paste it into the chat window. So Karen and Barb from the Archives of American Art at the Smithsonian want to know from both presenters about importing EAC from EAD. Didn't see a demo of that. That is actually one of the things that RAMP does very well, was to kind of create, not import. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the question. It creates kind of an EAC stub record from the EAD. Tim, do you want to tackle this question?
Right. Yeah. We during the initial stage, there's just a folder that you can put your EADs into, and then you click the import files link from the RAMP homepage, and it runs a transformation and extracts the relevant data from the EAD and creates an EAC record. So it's kind of a SNAC light functionality. It's what's I think SNAC has done in their prototype is something obviously more sophisticated, and they're algorithmically matching entities and creating merged EAC-CPF records from different sources. We tried to do a little bit of that for our local institutional records, so which are stored currently in the Archon management system. So we merged our Archon records in cases where we had multiple creators for the same collection, or vice versa. So, and there are actually some tools that you can use to do that kind of merging in the RAMP GitHub repository in the utils folder. But again, it's really designed to work with things from Archon.
So. Ethan, what about Zeek? Does Zeek do any kind of vacuuming up from EAD if you have EAD as a starting point?
No, it doesn't. I know that the SNAC team has already developed that, so I wasn't particularly interested in reinventing the wheel. I think if you have a large volume of EAD finding aids, I'd recommend contacting Brian Tingle or somebody from the SNAC team, because they already have really good scripts for doing that. My focus isn't particularly on creating EAC records from archival finding aids, but rather allowing you to build a social network from scratch, mainly.
Right. Thanks. And then there was a question, can you export EAC records from Zeek? And the answer to that is yes, in batch, which is, of course, awesome.
Well, to follow up on that, if you put .xml, there's a link to the XML file from the record page. So if you put .xml on the end of a URI, you'll get the EAC back. And also if you put .rdf on the end of the URI, you'll get the RDF XML representation of that person.
Great. Here's another question. Will records export in GraphML or other graph formats?
Is that for me?
Yeah, I think so.
I think so.
Yes and no, not GraphML, but part of the plan moving forward in the near future is to incorporate an RDF database and Sparkle endpoint into Zeek. So the RDF data will go into that Sparkle endpoint, and then from Sparkle you can create graphical representations of relationships. So it's not going to be GraphML, it will be RDF natively.
Okay, here's another question. I think I understand that you are linking the documents in your XML database using Xlink, but I think I also heard you say you were exporting them as RDF. Is that correct? If so, where do you put that RDF data?
At the moment, the RDF data isn't put anywhere. It's created dynamically when you request it. So when you go to the link that I just posted, hold on. When you go to the link that I just posted, then that is generated immediately upon going to that link.
Okay, so it's on request. RDF on request.
Yeah. Right, but once the Sparkle endpoint is incorporated into Zeek, when you click Save from the EAC record, it will automatically put that RDF into the database.
Okay. Here's a great question. I think this is for all the speakers. Speaking on behalf of small institutions that lack the technical support and staff time to contribute significantly to EAC efforts, what do you recommend we can do to contribute right now? For example, when I'm doing original MARC cataloging for manuscript collection, what could I do to make this data more useful?
Yeah, that's a great question. Did you have any thoughts about that, Allison?
Oh, gee golly, where do I start? We have locally had a lot of conversations about workflows and time management. I'm finding that it makes a lot of sense if you are sitting there creating a MARC record for a collection, that you could go ahead and bring in that data kind of as you're working with it, or as you're looking up and verifying authorized subject terms, or just as you're kind of, you've got everything right in front of you on your desk, to go ahead and put the information into RAMP and to be using those ingest features to help you create a more robust MARC record, but also go ahead and export or generate an EAC record for that person, which you could then use to convert to MARC Authorities record. Just kind of makes sense to me to be doing it all at once, and it doesn't seem to take up extra time. It also seems to sort of facilitate things that I'm already working on.
Yeah, something that we've kind of hypothetically talked about is using something like RAMP to create authority records, and then later on what we'd like to do is have a transformation or a style sheet that just converts from EAC-CPF to MARC authority format. So then you could have the EAC-CPF record and then create a MARC derivative from that. So actually probably wouldn't involve too much work, so that's something that we're looking into doing.
Ethan, as a person who sometimes consumes catalog data for your purposes, what could people do to help make a scholar like your work easier? Cut out some of the steps that you need to take.
I think that it's worth the time and effort to begin linking authorities in your own records to VIAF identifiers, because I'm under the impression that that just about every person in VIAF, defined in VIAF, will have an EAC record in NAC, the National or International Archival Authorities Consortium. So if you begin to incorporate VIAF identifiers into your MARC records or other types of records, that will provide a very direct pathway in the future for incorporating your content into NAC, and the web services built onto NAC will then allow other researchers to gain access to your information through linked data, basically.
Right. So exposing the explicit URIs for when you've made the link between your person and this person, including the link for that, the URI for that.
Yeah.
So Ethan, I actually had a quick question. When you're bringing in the results from VIAF, how are you sorting those? Are you just using the holdings key, or are you doing some kind of custom sorting?
What do you mean by sorting?
So how are you pulling in the VIAF clusters if there are multiple clusters for an entity?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm really only getting the name forms back from VIAF at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that there are multiple, or there can be multiple identifiers for a single entity.
Right.
But hopefully that gets condensed at some point. So it doesn't really account for duplication in that way.
Okay, I see.
Okay, well, we've reached the end of our segment together. Thank you so much to all of our speakers and to the attendees for really great questions and participation, and double thanks to all of you for so smoothly pulling through our technical difficulties earlier on. It was a very quick and smooth transition, and I'm grateful to all of you for handling that so well. So Melissa, I'll just give it back to you to take us out.
Thanks, Marilee, and thank you. Yes, I ditto from me of what Marilee said. Thank you all very much for joining us today and for transitioning through that trouble spot so gracefully. We will post a recording of this webinar on our website, on YouTube and in iTunes as soon as possible. Hopefully that will be sometime next week. So we will email you those links as soon as they're available. Thank you again, and this concludes today's webinar.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you.